Okay, so let's finish off with the anatomy of the skin by looking in greater detail at the epidermis. So I just left all my stuff here to help with that. Remember, this part that's being peeled back is the epidermis. The epidermis is made up of several layers and several different types of cells. And I'm going to try my best to put the layers and the cell types all together, but I don't have a whole lot of room. So we'll see how well this works out. I should have probably made that picture in the middle a little smaller, but I don't really think about it. Okay, so this is the epidermis, right? This is the epidermis. So we're going to assume this is thick skin. How do I know this is thick skin? Ooh, that's a good question you want to ask yourself. Because I see that clear layer right there. That clear layer is going to tell me that this is thick skin, and this is the stratum lucidum. Which means that everything above that is the stratum corneum. Now, I'm just going to label these and I'll talk about it, but you guys can write some extra notes as I talk. So the stratum corneum is made up of anywhere from 15 to 30 layers of cells that are all 100% dead. So remember over here when we took a look at, this is where the capillary is, right? So the capillary is sending nutrients up towards the epidermis because the epidermis is actually avascular. And I kind of told this in one of the lectures. I didn't have time in every lecture, but if you have a big family, like, so I grew up in a big family, and there was always this notion that, like, if you didn't get to the food first, it was probably going to be gone, but mainly meaning the cereal for breakfast in the morning because there were so many of us. And it's kind of the same thing with the number of layers of epidermis. So let's just think about this in terms of, this is where my capillary is, right here, okay? So what that is telling me is that nutrients can get to that first layer. So whoever is the first one down for breakfast. But then as you have these cells taking that nutrients, they're not so willing to let those nutrients get to the next level, right? Or the next level, or the next level. So you see how nutrients are going to be sucked up by all of these nice plump cells that are still alive, really close to the capillary right here. So that means the farther and farther away you get, the less likely you are to get nutrients. Just like if you were the last one down to breakfast, like, you didn't get the good cereal, you got whatever was left over. And as a kid, that's like, if you got Cheerios, it's like, damn, Cheerios is the only thing left. You know, the fun stuff was already all gone. Anything that had sugar in it, like Lucky Charms, it was all gone usually. So that's why the stratum corneum is dead cells. And it's also dead cells because we want those cells to be dead, because, like, you can see how this cell is starting to strip off, right? If I strip a layer off, or if I cut through these layers here, it's completely okay. It's not a big deal because it's all dead layers. You're not affecting anything that's living. The stratum lucidum is the next layer that's only found in thick skin, so in the palms and the soles only. So the palms and the soles have this extra layer because you want it to be in high abrasive areas. So as you use your hands a lot, you don't want that skin to be pulled off too often. Just like the sole of your feet, you don't want that skin to be pulled off too often. And this just gives us an extra layer. So if we have high abrasion, it doesn't all pull off everything. Okay. And then this next layer is kind of have to go like that. And then I'll have that layer like that. And then I'll have this layer like this. So the next layer, which is kind of purple and you see a whole bunch of dots in it, this is the stratum granulosum. So the stratum granulosum is made of cells that primarily have keratin in them. Actually, yes, they have a lot of keratin. So keratin is, again, that protein that has a water repellent, water resistant property. This is why if you take a shower or you go swimming, water doesn't get absorbed into your cells and, like, you puff up. And the other thing is, when you have water, like, from your capillaries is coming through, you're not losing an excess amount of water. since your body's like 80% water. You're not losing all that water, you're retaining it because the water gets pushed back inside your body and it gets pushed outside of your body or to remain outside of your body. Then we're going to have the next layer, which is anywhere from, I think, 8 to 10 cell layers thick. That's a little bit less important. This is the stratum spinosum. So the stratum granulosum is getting too far away from nutrients. So this is why our cells are starting to flatten. You see how those are more flat, and even the corneum layer is flat. But then in the spinosum layer, they're a little bit more plump. And it shows they're going through division, but division is probably not happening that high. Maybe a little bit towards the bottom portion, but only the bottom layer, the stratum bacellae, is going to do division. That's it. So the stratum spinosum is where you start to make keratin. You're close enough to nutrients that your cells are still alive, and you're going to start to make the precursor for keratin. And then once you get pushed up into the stratum granulosum, you're advanced enough in making that pre-keratin to actually start making keratin itself. So the stratum bacellae is our mitosis layer, or the layer that we can continue to make new cells. So remember, as you make new cells, like here, you see how that's making a new cell right there. You essentially are going to make a new cell, and one of those cells gets pushed upwards into the stratum spinosum layer. So most of these cells are keratinocytes. The keratinocytes are the normal stratified squamous cells that make keratin, basically. And then you have a couple of special cells here that are either found in the bacellae layer or the spinosum layer, and I'm going to highlight those ones. So this one that's branched like, this is the dendritic cell. Remember I told you in class, you're going to think this is a neuron. It's not a neuron. This is the immune cell. So most immune cells are only found in blood, and they have to move out of blood in order to fight immune responses. Because epidermis is avascular, you can't really have immune cells pushing their way through all those cell layers in order to get to a bacteria or virus that might be trying to invade you. So instead, there's just already cells in the epidermis that help get rid of anything that might be trying to enter. Now remember, this is a protective layer, so we don't want things to come in and we don't want things to go out. In this case, we really don't want things to come in, and the dendritic cell is going to help us prevent that. Then there's two that are going to be found in the bacellae layer. So this blue one that's attached to a neuron, this is the Merkel cell. The Merkel cell is basically a receptor. It's basically a fine touch receptor. Okay. So that fine touch receptor is like, you just imagine like a fly landing on you. You can feel it. Or like, have you ever had a hair on you somewhere and you could feel it, but you don't quite know where it was, but you could feel it. And it's really, really, really fine touch. Okay. That's what the Merkel cell is doing. This brown one at the bottom, which I don't have brown, so I'll just use this like kind of maroon color, which is also in the stratum bacellae. This is the melanocyte. Okay. The melanocyte is going to make melanin, which is a pigment protein. Once it makes melanin, the melanin goes to all the keratinocytes and covers the nucleus of the keratinocyte, so that that protein can help absorb UV light that may damage the nucleus. So obviously there's things like skin cancer that is a result of too much UV light, but the point is that the melanocyte is trying to at least prevent that in some way, shape, or form. Okay. This is why when you go to the beach and you get a tan, you actually like your skin darkens a little bit, because you're sending a message to the melanocyte saying, hey, I need better coverage because I'm more exposed to UV light. So I need more melanin to be produced so that I can protect my cells a little bit more. That's why it's funny that historically it wasn't okay to have tan skin. I know that's really bad historically, but now we see tan skin as being like, oh, you have enough time for vacation. And when you're pale, it's like, oh, you don't have enough time for vacation. That doesn't really adhere anymore because there's just tanning beds. So you could just go to a tanning bed for like, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes, something like that. This is the reason why you shouldn't be in a tanning bed for too long because it's exposure to too much UV light, which could actually damage your DNA. So everybody has the same number of melanocytes. It's just a matter of your genetics saying what type of melanin do you produce and how much quantity do you produce. You could be kind of pale like me, which means I don't actually make a lot of melanin, and it's probably the light, not probably, it is the lighter shade of melanin. Okay. You can have a slightly darker skin tone, or you can have a really dark skin tone, and it's just a matter of making more melanin. That's the only difference. Like, so technically we're not really different in terms of skin tone, or at least the cells. We're only different in terms of genetics, and that has to do with where our ancestors made their home, either in a high UV area or in a low UV area. Nothing else determines our skin tone or our skin color. Okay, so that's our epidermis. In a nutshell. You want to make sure you know like the different layers and like where these cells are. You see the dendritic cell here is in the spinosum layer. Versus the bacilli layer has all the other specialized cells. And then keratinocytes are the most numerous cell it's found in every layer. Okay.